I want to point out that we have a winner. Todd Hill picked up a copy of Glenn Beck's new book. Glenn actually wrote it with a co-author. It's called Agenda 21, and it's about what the country would look like a generation or two after the takeover of Agenda 21, when we no longer have a government of our own and we answer only to the elites. So I want to thank Todd for his call, and he's going to be picking up a copy of the book. Perhaps a little later this week, I may have a second copy to give away as well. And these are autographed copies, I should point out, too. 824, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. If you've looked at the weather forecast, we're going to see a dramatic change. 95 to 98 today. By the weekend, highs only in the lower 70s. By Labor Day, perhaps only in the upper 60s. Now, we're not going to see any rain with that, but you may start seeing some cold nights. And if you haven't tested out that furnace, you need to do that. And if you test it and you realize you've got a problem, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric today. The team at Ramsey's will make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric, 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Telephone number 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. So you've got a lot of, I think for wandering around the Twin Falls County Fair, temperatures in the 70s would be much more appreciated than a 95 to 98. I've had to deal with some of those really hot fair days in the past. And if you're outside and you're not in the exhibit halls get really crowded when it either rains or when it's really hot. Steve Millington can attest to that.
Yes, that's exactly right. If the wind gets blowing or if the rain weather gets really ugly, you can hardly get through the exhibit halls. Everybody's packed inside. So, when I looked at the temperatures and said, "Oh man, it's going to get clear down to 75 degrees for the fair for the weekend," then I thought, that's high temperatures between 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when most of us want to be there anyway. And that's really nice, comfortable weather to just kind of hang out and walk around and visit with folks and check all the food lines, and that's not too shabby.
We used to have a dairy festival in my hometown every year, which was like our fair. It'd be a week-long event, and the carnival would come to town on about a Tuesday and stay till about a Sunday, and there'd be a huge parade and events all over downtown, and which meant 2 blocks. But,
huge parade, that's right.
It's huge parade. But I remember my boss was one of the volunteer firefighters who always helped organize the carnival end of things. And he told me, he said, "You know what the best drought protection is around here?" And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Have a carnival because it'll rain all week."
That's exactly right.
But we don't have to worry about that here.
Well, we haven't had any rain, really, really bad weather for several years that I can remember. But once in a while, we do have a little tough stretch. And
I don't think we've had any significant rain since June.
Actually, our precipitation, let's get the fair over with, and then we can go to the rain program.
Yeah.
Now,
speaking of the fair,
yes. Friday afternoon from 2 and Friday afternoon, boy, give me a break here. From 5 until 7 for 2 hours. That's what I want to talk about. The Twin Falls Republicans have purchased all the advertising time on KLIX radio. And so we have all of the elected officers from the state of Idaho, all that will possibly or can show up, are going to be at the Twin Falls County Republican Fair booth. And we're going to have a guy by the name of Bill Colley. I don't know where in the world they found him. But anyway, this Bill Colley guy.
He's a shave. But...
is going to be at the GOP booth, and we're going to interview all of the candidates, either currently elected or those running for election or offices in the November primaries or generals. Will be available. We're going to record and have live messages on the radio station, and then they will also be available for people to stop by and ask questions and make sure they've got everything figured out. We have got confirmations on Senator Mike Crapo. We have a very likely, we are working our schedule from Brad Little, Lieutenant Governor. The others have kind of said it's on our schedule. We'll see if we can work it in. However, we will have all 9 of our legislative representatives from District 23, 24, 25. We may have a couple from 26, although they do have a campaign reception in Haley. that same Friday night. So we may not get any of the guys from 26 down here, District 26, but we'll have the 9 that represent the Twin Falls area. That would be Brackett and Megan Blensma and Christy Zito and Lee Hyder and Clow and Hartgen and Patrick and Kaufman and Maxine Bell. They will all be here. And all of the Twin Falls
Well,
County people will be
gotta
here.
gotta thank Clark Kaufman too. He dropped off a big bag of sweet corn here for the staff.
He
Delicious.
He's good. And you know, Clark does that a lot. We had corn on the cob at our summer picnic, the GOP summer picnic, courtesy of Clark Kaufman.
Want to mention we've got more with Steve Millington coming up in just a couple of minutes. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's 58 right now. Bill Colley with you as well at 8:30. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Can I quickly mention, I wanted to bring up the fact that we're going to be seeing Dr. Christine Pickup in studio with us in about 9 days. She's going to be here on the Thursday of next week. So, yeah, 9 days. And we wanted to point out that Mount Harrison Audiology, which is her business in Rupert, it is the only now locally owned and operated independent hearing center in southern Idaho. And she reminds you that if you're used to thinking of hearing as something that happens in your ears, it actually is what's between your ears that counts. The brain is where sound becomes information, and your brain has to work hard to make it happen. When the sound signals from your ears are compromised, the brain works even harder to fill in the gaps. Now, that effort can take a toll. Don't let your brain down, is what she's telling you. Take care of your hearing with the help of Mount Harrison Audiology. If you need a hearing screening, you can call her office at 312-0957. Steve Millington in the studio with us today. Coming up on 8:35, it's 58. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We were just talking off the air about how crowded it could become among Republicans looking to be governor. And Brad Little has been the man in waiting for almost 8 years, 6 years now, but it'll be 8 years by 2018. Lieutenant governor, he'd like the job. He's already announced. And then a little preemptive strike, along comes Russ Fulcher, who's run before and said he'd like to do it again. And a lot of rumors still circulating about Raul Labrador, but he can't do anything while he's running for another office. You can't say, well, I'll serve 2 more years in the House and then I'm going to run for governor. Your opponent tends to make a little hay with a statement like that.
It's an awkward arrangement for Congressman Labrador. He's got to be quiet until after his reelection in the House of Representatives. And you know, depending on what happens in the House of Representatives, he may find himself in some opportunities there that would preempt coming back to Idaho to be governor. So we have Brad Little and we have Russ Fulcher. Now, Russ Fulcher ran against Butch Otter 2 years ago, and I think he got within about 13,000 votes of beating Butch. And keep in mind, Butch had been governor now for 8 years by the time they were running for re-election there, and Fulcher got real close, and so he still has a great network of campaign people. He's got an organization that, although it may be dormant right now, it won't take much to bring it back to life, I don't think. And so Fulcher could be a real strong candidate. So we have Brad Little and we have Russ Fulcher, and I think one of the reasons, well, there's lots of reasons. One of the things that may be a result of Russ Fulcher announcing is that we will not get very many more wannabes. They're going to look at it and say, oh, this is a crowded field already. We got Brad Little, we got Russ Fulcher. What if we should get somebody like a Raul Labrador? And I'm not suggesting, I have no knowledge here of what he may or may not want to do, but suddenly the field is full. It's more than crowded. We have got strong, well-known, easily identified candidates on the state stage.
Now, the lieutenant governor represents, obviously, because of his role already, the establishment, I would think, if there is such a thing. It's difficult to see that in Idaho sometimes because I think that people here are much more almost libertarian in their personal lives, and They don't necessarily adhere to labels very long. But then you've got Fulcher, who really was the insurgent candidate a couple of years ago, and he had a lot of support from northern Idaho and some
Uh-huh.
pockets of eastern Idaho. And it's almost like we're living in three distinct states sometimes.
You know, you get that feeling, and that you really get it. I don't know if you were able to notice it, recognize it when you were at the state convention in June, but we have to kind of satisfy three distinct elements in the state party politics. The North Idaho people are they want to have a larger presence in the state. And by the way, they're growing rapidly up there in North Idaho. Then you've got what I refer to as the Treasure Valley, and that's everything from Weiser and that area clear on down, including Mountain Home, the Treasure Valley area, and Magic Valley kind of sits as a little kind of an island unto itself. And then you have Eastern Idaho, and you've got to get all three of those elements rounded up, or four of them actually. You got to get them all rounded up and put in place in order to make the whole system work in the state of Idaho. Now, Fulcher has a strong Treasure Valley presence. He has a above average North Idaho presence, and he does have a lot of people from Eastern Idaho who will get on board. He's not quite so popular, I don't think, in the Magic Valley area, but those other three areas, especially North Idaho and Treasure Valley, uh, he has a pretty good following in those areas.
We have a short break coming up. Steve Millington is in the studio with us. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. Bill Colley with you as well. It's 8:40, and we have 60. Going to warm up fast today into the mid to upper 90s. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Our studio guest is Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. We'll get to him in just a moment. I did want to mention, though, while you were with us this morning, Dr. Eric F. Jones has an office not too far away from our studio. Actually, he has two offices in Twin Falls. And he's a believer in the fact that perhaps we've gotten away from some of our more traditional forms of wellness. And in other words, let's not just keep medicating people all the time with whatever chemicals they come up with. He's been in practice since 1993 with master's and doctoral degrees in marriage and family therapy. Dr. Eric F. Jones uses methods of alternative healing, naturopathy, nutrition, medicinal herbs, sound waves, intellectual and cognitive self-regulation, and apathy to help remedy and manage mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. He's currently accepting new patients with evening and Saturday appointments available. Telephone number to reach his office, 731-7178. And on Facebook, you can find him, Eric F. Jones, Ph.D., mental health and wellness therapist, and that's Eric with a C. Steve Millington and I were talking about Agenda 21 off air for a couple of minutes because I was on the subject of that when he arrived, talking about Glenn Beck's new novel and the predictions it makes about what would happen if it becomes true. But there's a hint that we might be
Closer than we want to be. One of the things that President Obama is currently anticipating, and he's been working on this for some time now, but he is almost to the point of making a executive order decision, and that is to give control of our internet services to the United Nations. And every time I hear about that or read about it, I just cringe. I mean, why in the world would we want to give up control of the internet? And this would be content and access primarily that we enjoy in this country on the internet, and we would be giving it away. I mean, it just blows my mind. So maybe Glenn Beck and his little Agenda 21 is not quite so crazy as you might want to think it is. So there's just something for you to
I compared that to President Carter giving away the Panama Canal.
exactly. And uh, for the longest time, we had all kinds of issues down there. Now they have since put several $billions into rebuilding part of the canal and widening it, expanding the lock systems down there so they could put bigger ships through there. But we could lose the Panama Canal if we had a change of government in the nation of Panama. They could just say, we're done.
Well, and the Chinese have had their eyes on that canal for years.
For
They've
a
also
long time.
they want control of the internet. That's they claim that there are far more Chinese speakers than there are two different
English
forms of
speakers,
Chinese,
that's
right?
right.
And therefore that they should be running the thing, even though it was developed by our military or for our military. It's 847. Telephone number to reach our program today, 736-0300. Steve Millington, our guest this half hour. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Caller, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning. Not to change the subject, but to add to it, Agenda 21, the person in the United Nations who's writing the different things about Agenda 21, the rules and regulations, is vehemently opposed to the United States and has had several rants about how bad and how terrible we are. So you can expect nothing but garbage from the United Nations with regard to Agenda 21. Thank you.
Want to thank him for the call, and
We don't have very many friends out there, and
doesn't seem it any longer.
Not any longer. And when we try, when someone tries to take away things that we consider to be part of our daily life, and give them to somebody like the United Nations, I just cringe. I just don't try. I didn't elect any of those people.
No, me neither.
I didn't get to vote for any of them. And
Yeah.
they're going to cram down stuff on top of me? I don't think so.
By the way, we'll get to our caller. Caller, be patient just for a moment. I just have to say that one of the big fans of this segment of our program, Bjorn Handeen, who's, of course, a committeeman from up north in the Republican Party, he has a birthday today. So if he's listening,
happy birthday.
We'll wish him a happy birthday today for sure.
Great.
Caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. I'm calling back, Bill. But the point is when I see in the paper a vision for Twin Falls, you go down there list by list, it's all about Agenda 21. And if you study Agenda 21 and study it in depth, then you understand where this thing takes us. If in the beginning it seems harmless, but in the end it's absolutely terrible. But the busing mandated by the feds. We don't need the feds telling us how to run our city, but that's what they do. And then you go on down there and then read through it. I kept the article in the paper, and it just hit me. But you see, in order to believe it, you've got to understand what it really ends up meaning. Thank you.
Hey, and before you go, have you gone yet? No, we lost him.
No.
But that's true that in order to get federal funds, they'll deny that money to you if you don't set up that system.
That's exactly right, and that's the power of the purse again. And so we're going to. You can only get funds for these projects if you do things our way, and that's kind of the way it is with the stick and the carrot on education. We have $250 or $275 million a year we're going to give to the state of Idaho, but only if you do. And then we have highways. If we lost federal funding for highways, we would be in so much trouble we wouldn't even know which way was up. So they have got us wrapped up around these funding mandates. They will give us this much money, but only if we do things this way.
And bus services, which can be pleasant, I've used them, but they're not necessarily money makers by any means.
They are not money makers. Net. You can't find a handful of them anywhere in the United States that are
not even Portland.
Self-sufficient. They're just not.
We have another caller. Caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Just wanted to bring something up as well of how the UN and Agenda 21 has affected basically every county of the United States already. And if you look at county codes, they're all based upon the International Property Maintenance Code that the UN has mandated. So we're a lot further along in the process than I think a lot of people realize. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I've got a point on that. I have a friend, he's a Methodist preacher back in southern Delaware. Yesterday, the county came to him, an inspector, and said, "You've got to cease construction on the shed in your backyard." And he said, "You mean the portable shed I put out there 10 years ago?" And he said, "Yes."
Right.
So I know you had a thought. Go ahead.
The thing, and I have lost track of it, but there was a ruling that came down from housing that the feds were going to mandate zoning requirements over every city and county in the United States, and if they didn't meet those zoning mandates, boy, I've got to think here, zoning mandates, they would not provide guarantees on any residential real estate mortgages. So, in other words, you couldn't get a mortgage on your real estate property because you didn't uh, meet the federal zoning requirements, and therefore Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could not guarantee your. And I've lost track of where that is. I don't know whether it's still alive or whether somehow it got killed. Nothing back there ever gets killed. So, but we start talking about people mandating controls on us. Control, control, control. And this is way offline, but on Fox News this morning, they were saying that the European Union slammed Apple Company to the tune of $15 billion
Billion, yeah, with a B.
tax. B, yeah,
Yeah.
lots of money here, boys and girls. A tax fine because Ireland had given them special privileges to locate in Ireland with their big facility there. And so now the European Union comes back and says, oh, you have to collect $15 billion.
I think the Irish have to do what the English did and just say
Goodbye.
sayonara.
We're out of here.
We got
And here's why. That the European Union is not interested in the money. Apple's got plenty of money to pay that bill. They've got over $250 billion in cash and cash equivalents on their balance sheet. So the $15 billion is not the issue is control. And the European Union wants absolute control over all of its member states.
we have
Absolute.
a caller. You're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley.
Good morning.
Well, thanks for taking my call. We have to get off the federal tit. It's just, who's paying those taxes? We're paying the taxes, and we send the money to them, and then they tell us what to do. This is nonsense. Every time I'm in a bunch of these, the federal, we spread federal money around, and that, we just have to get over the idea that we have to send them money and then have them tell us what to do with it. It's nonsense. I just get so frustrated when I see this thing happening. And it happens in almost every phase of our lives now.
You can't keep track of it any longer.
That's exactly it. It is permeated our society so much that you can't hardly even turn around without one of these things coming back and grabbing us.
I watched a movie about 30 years ago called Brazil, and it was about a bureaucratic society in the future, and you couldn't even get a repair done on your AC unit at home without having government come by and fill out forms. And the whole movie is funny, but I mean, it makes a joke about how a renegade repairman sneaks around in the middle of the night doing repairs for people. But if you get caught, they discover that you did the repairs without filling out the paperwork. The government will throw the book at you.
Yeah, they're just gonna make your life miserable, and that's, oh, jeez, it's unreal. It's complete, and I think Ireland will probably do exactly what Britain did. They'll have a vote and say we're done with the European Union, and the one other aspect. Why is Apple in Ireland to begin with? Because Ireland's corporate income tax is 12.5%.
Low.
And they cut a deal to get Apple to come there and set that down at a below level. One report that I read said it was like 1 or 1.5%. And so Apple has 5,500 employees in this one city in Ireland. I can't remember the name of the city. Largest employer in the whole area. And now, why should we be there? Well, as I read the article about Apple, a couple of things that I noticed. Number one, Apple has over $250 billion in foreign subsidiaries around the world. Why isn't that money back in the United States? Because the foreign countries, the tax rate is 12, 14, 15, 10%. And in the United States, it's 35. So why would I want to bring that money back to the United States? I could just leave it in the foreign countries. I can borrow it from Ireland and spend it in Spain. I can borrow it from Germany and spend it in Hong Kong. I can borrow it in Hong Kong and spend it in Australia. I don't need to have it in the United States. And so what we've done with this atrocious, obscene tax system is force jobs out of the United States. Trump is right on that point. Drop that corporate tax rate to 15%. And the money will come back in the United States. Why does Apple have $215 billion in foreign countries?
If we had a government-funded bullet train, I could go see Trump in Everett, Washington today.
Shit. And by the way, we're getting ready to close down. You don't need a bullet train. You can just get in your car and you can drive to Boise, Idaho on Thursday of this week. Mike Pence will be at a meet and greet in the Zions Bank building downtown, 17th floor. Starts at 1 o'clock. It is absolutely nothing more than a shake hands photo op. They're going to want you to write a check. I'd never heard any idea about how much they want, but they're looking to raise money. But he will be in the Zions Bank building, downtown Boise, Thursday, 1 o'clock.
Good man, and he should be president someday, too.
Yeah, he's a pretty sharp fella. He'd be okay.
Want to thank Steve Millington.
We could do with him.
We'll see you Friday.
See you at the fair.
Friday, 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Steve Millington and myself will be there, and we'll be there with a lot of other Republicans. Hope to see all of you.